starting a new year, 2021, and I'd love for everybody to read through the scripture this year. Maybe you've had that on your goals for a long time. This is a year we're going to read straight through the scripture. Each week we'll be given a new video that talks about what you're going to be reading this week. We're starting, of course, in the book of Genesis. Genesis is one of the longer books in the Bible. It's really broken up into two sections. You've got Genesis 1 through 11, and you've got Genesis 12 through 50. So we're starting in Genesis 1 through 11, where God, our creator, he creates everything. He creates the universe out of nothing. So out of the darkness and the void and the chaos, he creates all things. And then he creates Adam and Eve, and he says, I want you to multiply, to flourish, to take dominion over the earth. And so they can choose to trust in God or they can choose to rebel. And of course, we know they choose to rebel. And what are the consequences of that? Well, Genesis tells us what the effects of that are, and you start to see this downward spiral of humanity. And you start to see all these random stories. You wonder how they all fit together. You see this first couple arguing about who disobeyed God first. You see two brothers, and one brother murders the other. You see the first polygamist in the Bible, this guy who marries two women and starts this oppressive institution of polygamy. You see this weird story about the Nephilim, etc. And so what you're seeing is how sin affects all of humanity, how it breaks relationships apart, how it breaks your relationship with God, and what is God's response to that? Well, he sends the flood. So he sends justice, but in the midst of that, he chooses to redeem and to rescue. And so he rescues Noah and his family. Noah becomes the new Adam in a sense, that all of humanity now is going to come from Noah, but people continue to rebel. The climax of that happens when all the nations gather together to build this tower in Babylon, and their pride says we can reach up to the heavens, make a name for ourselves, and God's response is to scatter them. And so Genesis is answering the question, why is the world so messed up? And what is God going to do about it? So it starts to zoom in, it going from this bigger picture, zooms in, Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3, zooms in on one guy named Abram and his family. And God's going to change his name to Abraham, and God's going to give him a promise. He's going to say, through you, I'm going to bless you, and I'm going to make you a blessing to all nations. And it doesn't really go into a lot of detail of what that is going to be. We're going to talk about it more as we go through this. But the story of Abraham and his family and this blessing is tied to God's redemption of the world and what God is going to do about this sin problem in humanity. So read Genesis 1 through 11. We'll talk about Genesis 12 through 50 in the next video. Happy reading. I'll talk to you soon.